Here we are, and welcome to a live talk with Becky Chernek. And boy, let me tell you, tonight I have a good one. I have our featured guest speaker, Mr. Tom Kline. And I got to tell you, he is well known in the automotive industry world. And he is the founder of, hopefully I don't butcher this for you, Tom, Vantage Point, Better Vantage Point, and he's also the author of, I got to tell you, the Tuck the Octopus. You want to talk about a great name? Here it is right here, and great content. Thank you so much for my complimentary copy.
Absolutely.
And so much. Congratulations on all the success that you've had, Tom. It is such a pleasure to bring you on tonight. Okay, so for you guys that are new to this channel, I'm Becky Chernek, and I've been providing the very best in F&I sales, F&I training, desking, you name it, for automotive dealers. Oh gosh, since 2001. I've been in the automotive industry.
For a few years, just for a few years.
Not as long as Tom.
But sorry, I'm longer in the tooth than you.
I think you've got this. So here's the thing. I've decided to shorten this up a bit so we can get to Tom, and my bio, my link for those that really want to have a better understanding of what I can do and how I can help you to impact performance while staying compliant. Take a look at my bio, my link in the description. Okay, so also we are going live, and we're going live on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. So if you love what we're talking about, I hope that you do tonight, because this is going to be fun stuff. Please, if you would, please share and like. Please share and like. Okay, Tom, here we are. It is all about you for our dealers and viewers. If you wouldn't mind, share your brief background with us to get us started tonight.
Sure. Just in case anyone was wondering whether this is a real car guy show or not, I brought something with me just for tonight.
Oh, no.
And here we go. Now we have a real car show, okay?
It's, Tom, you never, what is that? You always amaze me.
Try to surprise you a little bit. So I'm Tom Kline. My family's been in the car business 100 years this year. Wow. I was a dealership owner for 30 years. We sold our stores in 2019, and I specialize in risk and compliance. And what does that mean? You know, that feeling you get when you wake up and you put your feet on the floor and you're nervous about what might happen. That's what I do. Is I make sure that the what might happen doesn't happen. And so the analogy that I came up with is that running a dealership is like trying to tuck an octopus into bed, but the tentacles keep flopping all over the place. And my job is to tuck those tentacles in and make sure that everything's moving in the right direction and smoothly.
Well, first of all, we have, here we have David Foy. David, good to see you. And he said, great to see you both. So I'm glad you're on tonight with us. So, I've got a first question out of the gate. And, so many dealers, they say, they're leaving profits on the table by being compliant. You hear this all the time. Becky, how far over the line can we go before it's not good?
Right.
Before we get in trouble.
Right.
Tom, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's natural to have anxiety about being compliant, right? And let's just be honest about compliant. If your significant other said to you, Becky, I want you to have dinner on the table tonight at 6 o'clock, it better be there. You'd go, oh, what? Right? You'd say, what are you saying? What are you saying of me? Right? You're not going to be compliant, and nobody wants to be compliant. It's just human nature that nobody wants to be compliant. So you have to consider that when you're thinking about these changes. And statistically, it's been shown that if you are compliant and transparent, that profits will actually go up. not go down. But changing, if you're not compliant and you're not transparent, and you know you're not doing things right, it's scary to make that change. And so the hard part there is the change management, getting everybody on board with that, getting the sales managers and the salesmen and everybody pulling in the right direction. And change management is an important part of making sure that everyone is compliant, because just because you say that here's what our policy is, unless somebody goes back and checks behind, you don't know whether they're being compliant or not. You don't know whether they're doing what you want them to do. And so part of compliance, of course, is making.
Are you trying to say that compliance is not fun?
That's what I'm saying. Compliance is not fun. I'm fun, you're fun, but compliance not necessarily. But it's it's an important part of running a dealership. And running a dealership, I see it kind of two different ways. I see dealerships that are run like banks. It's just they sit there and they make money. They just happen to sell cars. That just happens to be how they make money. And then the other way is, dealerships are run by dealers who are loose on policies and procedures and whatever happens that day. So, and everything in between. And I'm not here to say one way is better than the other. It's the dealer's risk and the dealer's money that's on the line every day. And so whatever their risk tolerance is, that's that's up to them.
It's up to them to determine what that risk is. So speaking of that, the Trump administration. So right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm not going to go there. We're not talking politics so much.
That's right.
The Trump administration is limiting the CFPB's power, and there's no more teeth in the game. And so are dealers off the hook for compliance?
Yep, great question. So the latest ruling on the CFPB, the judge said that they can't close the CFPB. That's the latest ruling. That was as of, I think, 48 hours ago. That's still unfolding, obviously. What will happen, and Trump is also trying to take control of the Federal Trade Commission, of which it was chartered to be an independent agency. So I think eventually that may go to court too. We'll see how that unfolds. Mm-hmm. But as these federal laws are taken under the administration, I think that nature abhors a vacuum. And so what's going to happen is that the state attorneys general are going to step up, and you will see stepped up enforcement by the AGs. We've seen that during the Biden administration in the last 6 months. In the last 6 months, there have been 6 actions against dealerships, including a $20 million fine against one dealership group. And these were in 6 different states. It was New York, Arizona, Maryland, Illinois, and I'm not sure about the other ones. But the state AGs are also known. Some people say that AG stands for almost governor, right? And the governor, the current governor of Massachusetts was an AG. The current governor of Texas was an AG. So these are very politically motivated people. And car dealerships are, an easy target. Even if they lose, they feel like, I guess, that they win because they're trying to protect the people. And so I think to lower your guard about your compliance activities, I think is a mistake. And one other point about this is all of these laws can be backward looking. So if the next administration is Democratic and they put all these things back in place, then they can look backwards and see what the behaviors were of the businesses, and they can still pursue claims that way. So whether it's the state or federal, I still think that compliance is going to be an important part of running a business.
Okay, so how far over the line can some of these dealers go?
Well, that's a risk question, right? That's not a compliance question. So if the dealership listen, I had a dealership that almost had no insurance, no liability insurance, because they felt like it was just unnecessary. And I said, well, what happens if your lot porter runs over someone? Oh, that never happens. I said, well, what happens if someone get killed? And they said, oh, that never happens. I call that a case of the yets, right? It hasn't happened yet, so it's not going to happen to me. And that really is a risk tolerance question. When you put your feet on the floor in the morning, as I said, and you say to yourself, I'm laying it all on the line today. In the typical franchise, single point dealership is worth between 20 and 30 million by the time the land, the building, the parts they own in cash, the used cars they own in cash, and the blue sky. And if they want to put it all on the line, that's their decision. But just remember, there are regulators out there, and there are attorneys out there, and people who want to reach in the dealer's pocket.
So having the best practices put in place and doing your best, putting your best foot forward will often help as well when it comes to selling your dealership. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, sure. I mean, it depends on
acquiring additional equity or having access to that.
Well, I mean, it's one of many, many different negotiating points, right? When you're negotiating for another store. Right. So, and who's going to inherit that liability? The FTC recently has gone after individuals and even former owners of dealerships. So again, another risk question is that how you want to run your business? And are you concerned about that?
So why do you think that some dealers really take a back seat when it comes to ensuring that they're doing their due diligence in mandating certain product practices? Where I'm going with this one, Tom, is some of the dealers tell me, Becky, I have my own F&I provider, and they ensure our due diligence and that we are putting best practices in place. And I, frankly, being in the trenches myself as a platform F&I director, I know what goes on. Right. And that's ridiculous. That is about the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm just saying, that is like, how do your F&I providers know what's going on internally? I have yet to see an F&I provider. I don't know. Maybe they're few and far between. I'm sure there's 2% somewhere that are sitting at the desk with your desk managers ensuring that we're compliant. I have yet to see that. And you know what? Here's the thing. I'd be happy to do a deal audit and kind of see where we're all at in this whole thing.
Well, next time a dealer says that, say, I'd like to see the last deal audit they did for you. Let's review it together. And they're gonna say, what do you mean? You say, well, here's what a deal audit, will reveal. And I look at these 50 points, and these 50 things are important to consider. And what are we doing on this and that? And how are we pricing things? And how's it disclosed on the buyer's order? And how's it disclosed on the retail installment sales contract? And what are you doing about disparate impact? And right, I mean, there's hundreds of questions to look at and consider how they're doing business.
So just in, what we're talking about, or like we talked about, there are like 1 to 10 different episodes that you and I could do together just on this topic alone. But if you could talk about bait and switch, I mean, so I have dealers that tell me, Becky, listen, we have dealers all over the country who are doing bait and switch. And frankly, if we don't play along, we lose out on potential sales.
Sure.
What do you say to that?
So
search engine optimization, all that takes place when you look for a dealer, when you search for a dealer, right?
So advertising, as an umbrella, you have to, it's very, number one, it's jurisdictionally sensitive. So who your competitors are, how they're pricing, How much is their processing fee? Is there a processing fee that's legal in that state? What are the state laws? What are the specifics of how they're doing it? What are the specifics of how you're doing it, right? It's very fact specific. So I can't say, one giant way to take that on, but there's you have to have information in order to be able to make intelligent decisions, right? And so the first thing you have to do is see what other information or what other dealerships in your area are advertising, how they're advertising, and then there are great tools like VinQ and others that will show you how much they're advertising this similar vehicle for, right? And so now the market intelligence is very specific, and you can tell what they're doing, and you can see whether the sales manager who's in your office complaining about the prices is full of it, or if they have a legitimate concern, and then you have to address it from there. So there's no one.
Well, I can only really talk to you about some of my experience, like when I'm going into dealerships and they're telling me that they're not adhering to the web price, the pricing online, and it's, well, if the customer doesn't talk about it, we don't talk about it, and we just take the pricing down. I'm not trying to be a snitch. I'm just telling you, this is the real world. This is what's going on. And then I talk to dealers and they tell me, you know what, Becky, here's the thing. It's the price game. It is what it is. And they're not, certain disclaimers aren't happening. And there's this one pet peeve one I have, but we're blowing up here. So I'm going to hear back from some of the folks here that are responding. Laws or not, dealers just need to do the right thing and run their business transparently and stop being so transactional with the customer. Do the right thing so you can sleep soundly at night. Chris Kerr.
Yeah, so one of the things, Becky, is in a recent FTC complaint, they archive the prices on your website. I mean, your website is out there, and they archive that information, and they go back and they compare it to what you sold the car for. So it's happening in real time right now, and the complaint that was just filed in December, is that's happening, right?
So you have a Florida Attorney General, right? It's been 20 years since anything, and now they're saying, here's the deal: we're coming down on car dealers that are deceptive or purposely. You help me.
Right. The Florida AG sent out a letter and said, I'm giving you a warning. I'm giving you some time so you can get your act together. We're going to come after you on these items. And the memo that you have that I forwarded you details exactly what they're going to look for. Yeah. So if you're in Florida and you haven't looked at this, at this memo, call me or call Becky, and we'll be glad to send it to you so you can see it. But they're telegraphing and telling you what the problem is. I mean, that's what the AGs are. These AG complaints are. A lot of them are alleging bait and switch, and some of that is probably real, and some of it is probably that the salesmen don't know what the advertised price is. But then again, there's others. There was a dealer on the West Coast last year that an inspector from that state went in to buy a car for himself personally. And he went and said, hey, I'm interested in this car at this price. And the salesman said, oh, we never sell cars at that price. That's just there to pull people in. And the inspector apparently was like, excuse me? What did you say? I'm not sure I heard you right.
That's probably true. Hate to say it, guys.
That turned into a problem, right? I mean, that was a state inspector. He was a state consumer affairs.
Well, if we're going to go ahead and lie, make sure everyone's on point, right?
Absolutely.
Make sure everyone's on point. If anyone asks you, this is how we do it.
This is what we say. We just advertise it that way to get people in here.
It's a shame. It really is. But, that's the thing, so a lot of times, our folks aren't on point and they don't know any better. They don't know. I mean, they tell it the way it is. And that's half the battle right there. And that's what gets dealers into trouble. I mean, you called it the way it is. I mean, that's reality. Integrity, honesty, and ethics. Yeah, it sure does go a long way. Mike
Absolutely.
Moran, Tom, do you help dealers update their employee handbooks?
Yes, I do, Mike. And I'm glad you brought up employee handbooks. First of all, I like calling them guidebooks. And the reason I like calling them guidebooks is I was in a deposition once, and the plaintiff attorney made a big deal about the difference about what a handbook. So because our position was this was a policy we had that hadn't made it in the handbook yet, and this plaintiff attorney said, well, handbooks, everything's contained within a handbook. And then I came up with the idea of calling it a guidebook, because a guidebook guides you, right? And it's not, there's the connotations of every single policy are not necessarily in there. And it's important, Mike, when you think about guidebooks, you also have to think in tandem with that, in my opinion, from my perspective. You have to look at your insurance coverage, right? You have to see what your current policy covers, and then try to fill in the soft underbelly for what it doesn't cover by having robust enough policies that everyone signs off on, to make sure that everybody knows that's what your policy is, so that you can have what they call an affirmative defense to say, look, we have a very strict policy on this issue, and here's what it is, and they sign it individually, and there's certain ways you can couch that to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward, or you negotiate with your insurance company and get it covered one way or another, or change insurance companies. But yes, I do, to answer your question.
Okay, Randy, is there one place to go to make sure a dealership is compliant in every department?
Okay,
Good
Randy.
question, Randy.
Good question. So every year, almost every year, NADA puts out an 8-page, I'd say it's probably 8-point type list of all the rules and regulations that dealerships are supposed to follow. Now, I have compiled, in addition to that, I've compiled a 48-page booklet of every single law that dealerships are supposed to follow. And other than that, there is, as far as I know, there is no one source. And when you're thinking about how to be compliant, if you're a dealership that's just starting out and you want to know where to start, you start where the biggest liabilities are. And believe it or not, where I start, with dealerships, besides on their insurance, I start with IRS 8300 compliance, because nobody does it right. And the potential fines are up to $250,000 per instance that you missed, and up to 5 years of jail time. And the last
So
dealer.
can I could just cut you off for a second
Absolutely.
here?
Sure.
I mean, I got to talk about this 8300 form, and nobody can figure out. We've been talking about the 8300 form, Tom, for years. How is it that you can't figure it out now? I mean, it's like, if a person is $10,000, you've got to fill out cash money, cash. You got to fill out this 8300 form. Now, I know things have changed in dollars and cents and how that form is filled out, but it's got to be filled out. Well, why are we having problems with that today?
Here's why. It's very simple. If any dealers are watching, you can go talk to your cashier tomorrow morning, and this will answer the question whether you have a problem. So walk over to your cashier and say, if I give you $12,000 of cash, how are you going to receipt it? And the cashier's going to say, well, you go to the screen and it drops down here, and I type in cash. Okay, got it. If I give you a $7,000 cashier's check, how do you receipt that in? And they're going to say, you go to the screen, you drop down, and you write CHK. Say, okay, if I give you a personal check, how are you going to receipt that in? Well, you go to the same box and you drop down and CHK. Right there, you can stop, because you have a problem. If you're receiving cashier's checks the same way you're receiving personal checks, then you can't pull a report through your DMS to see where
So
you
my
would see
question is, why is that
$10,000.
happening? I don't
Well,
mean to cut you off.
because
Why is that
cashiers,
happening at the cashier's desk, and why is that not happening in F&I when the customer is coming down with the cash down? Why is that happening like that?
well, it might happen that the customer has a hold check and they come back later and replace it with cash, right? So they give a example, they give a $7,000 cashier's check. Up to 72 days or 76 days, it's still within TILA. Now banks don't love that, but that is true. But if they replace, so let's say you have a $4,000 cash and a $7,000 cashier's check, that's reportable. That's $10,000. If you think about cash from the IRS's perspective, it's anything that doesn't go through the Federal Reserve, right? It's not a personal check. So cashier's checks, cash, money orders, traveler's checks, if anybody still has a traveler's check, any of that is considered cash. And so that's why that becomes a problem, is because nobody's if you're not receipting it right, you'll never be able to track it and run a report through your DMS to see, what you're supposed to do.
I find that fascinating that we have customers going directly to a cashier as opposed to going into F&I for down payment and that sort of stuff. And I can understand the whole checks and things like that, but I would think that the customer would still be going into the F&I office to handle those differences.
Well,
and even the whole
F&I
check to me is kind of like, I know, Tom, when I was doing F&I back in the day, we did a lot of hold checks, right? Oh, we can hold this for 30 days. What the hell? I mean, that's not necessarily the right way of doing business, is it today?
No.
I mean, I'm not here to go ahead and say anything, but I'm just saying, I remember we did, right? Hold check this, hold check that. But
it's a risk question, right?
It's a risk question. It's a compliance question too, because if you're doing a hold check and you're doing a finance deal, that's not compliant.
It's not compliant with the bank.
No, it's not.
Right. So,
but is that really risky?
Depends on the bank. It depends on your relationship with the bank. It depends on lots of things, right?
It depends, right? It depends if they turn around, if the customer has a repo, it's going to be like, okay, we have a whole check here. We don't have real funds down. We have some more questions. Sites like Car Gurus and Carfax, it's a race to the bottom to be listed as a great deal, which dealers then fall into bait and switch.
Well, Chris, the first question is do sites like Car Gurus and Carfax sell cars for you? And can you attribute them specifically? I mean, how do you know that they're selling cars for you? And if it is a race to the bottom line, then you have to, again, that's all fact specific based on your market, based on your competition, based on the kind of cars you're selling, the whole thing. So I really can't give you intelligent comments without having all the factual information and seeing what there is to,
I think what he's trying to say is that in a lot of these platform providers, I mean, it's all race to the bottom, right? It's all a race to, pricing. And so in our effort to get to the best price, we'll do anything to make that happen. And right. And so we might forget some of the disclaimers when it comes to these special discounts that we give. And lo and behold, when the customer gets into the dealership, wouldn't you know it? Guess what? We're going to go ahead, and since you're not financing at the dealership, guess what? We can't offer you that $1,000 discount. Now, to me, I just feel like that's illegal. Just a rough way to go.
Yeah, it's illegal. And
why is that illegal?
Because you're discriminating. You're discriminating a cash buyer versus a financed buyer.
So it's more discriminatory than anything else. Like, why can't I just get, years ago, Tom, I'm going to go back to years in the business. So I know you were in, I was in.
Right.
And So we would have negotiation, and and so I can tell you how many times we talked about, Becky, is a customer going to be financing with us or what? So we knew we had additional profit we could lean on to cut the
Right.
deal.
Right.
If not, we cut the deal loose. Now, but I think that this is like too much in my face. And the back and forth I'm getting from this is like, I have the right to discount my vehicle any which way that I want. Do they?
But it's deceptive, right?
In what way?
Well, the customer comes in and says, I want to buy this car for this price. I should be able to buy when you go into Target or Walmart and they advertise.
Well, we have a disclaimer on here, and you know what we say? It's $1,000 if you're financing. If you're not, you don't get it.
The disclaimer doesn't disqualify what you have up top ever. That's just a misnomer, and that's not true. And the FTC,
that is big, because I don't think dealers know that, Tom.
That's the truth. I speak in truth. I'm a truth teller. I'm a truth teller.
Truth will set you free.
You can't disclaim. You can't disclaim. You can't say, I'm going to give it to you for $5, except if your hair is blue and it's Thursday. You can't do that. You just can't. I mean, you can, but you'll have a problem at some point. And so I think it's deceptive, and it's against
some of your articles, and I mean, because when you see it in black and white, I think that kind of says something to you, like, I mean, cannot do this. This is something we're going after. And it's like, I'm constantly in this debate with folks, Tom, and they're saying, I can discount my vehicle any which way I want. I'm like, I hear you, but are you really being ethical when you do that?
Well, maybe
legal. I've not been an
ethical is one thing. Ethical is one thing. Legal is another.
Legal is quite another than ethical, isn't it?
That's right.
And you're calling it. There's the line, and you're saying, Becky, you're not being legal.
It's not legal to. It's bait and switch. I mean, it's deceptive. I mean, as an example, about 3 years ago, I called up a dealership and I said, listen, I'm a compliance consultant and dealer, former dealer. We just sold our stores, and you have an advertised price for $649 for a lease. If I come in there, am I going to be able to get this car for $649 a month? And they said, no, we just advertise it like that. The real price is $1,000 whatever dollars it was. There's a chapter in Tuck the Octopus about this. I call it the title of that chapter is like the lollipop model, the lollipop one. And the reason is it's like taking a lollipop from a child, right? Here's your lollipop. Oh, psych. Not giving you the lollipop anymore, right?
Well,
that's crazy. That's unethical, taking a lollipop away from a baby. But
some of the folks either don't get that, or they haven't been to that training class. They don't get that. They're telling me, Becky, how is that not ethical? How is that not legal? And I'm like, think about it.
In this case, it was even worse because they were advertising I want to make sure I get this right, a base model price with pictures of the highest trim level.
Ooh.
So, they play that game too.
Yeah.
So I said, is this the whatever model? And they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, okay. And then, from 600 and whatever to over $1,000 for the,
So we have Chris Kerr. I never did it as a dealer and gained enough customers that left dealers who were in the business of bait and switch.
Of course.
I'm not trying to be the fault. I really am not. I just know what's going on out there. I have the ones who I'm in the trenches. I see it, I hear it, I feel it, I see it. And I do know that these are practices, common practices that are happening in our industry. And we have dealers that tell me, Becky, you know, if in fact we put our pricing, we're undermined because of these other dealers that are doing this. This is what's happening in our industry, and it's a shame. It really is. And Mike Moran, Tom, can you help dealers with third-party vendor compliancy?
Yeah. So, Mike, the answer is yes. Getting third-party vendors to be compliant, for example, with the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, very difficult. There are things you can do, but just using that as an example, and that is because the whole car business is set up on the ADF XML format, which you can't encrypt. So you've got data coming back and forth, and there are ways to do it, but it becomes cumbersome. It can become cumbersome. But yes is the answer to your question.
Got another one.
I have software vendors. Tom, can you help dealers with text or SMS operating platforms for the sales department messaging? That is not my specialty, but I can probably find someone who can help with that, Mike. If you reach out tomorrow, I'll be glad to talk to you about that.
See, this is all working out great. This is wonderful. You get to know Tom and he's getting to know you. And I got to tell you right now, Tom has all the connections in the world. And he's a super great guy because he just tells it the way it is. I love him for his facts. And, he's got that dealer mind to him. And then he's got that risk side of him. And it all comes together. And it's good stuff here, Tom. Thank you so much. It really is. Randy, I was in a dealership about 4 years ago that did just that, a large dealer group, and they thought that they were okay to discount a car on their website by $1,000 with their financing. If you pay cash or use outside financing, they were not eligible for the discount. Randy, here's the deal. It happens a lot.
Absolutely.
I know this is not blowing up right now, but I am telling you, and I'm not trying to be the snitch here. I'm just saying we have to come to terms with some of this stuff. You got folks out there that you're hiring, that you're training up, that have to go ahead and deliver a pencil or a presentation, however which way you want to call it, and then say, oh, by the way, you're paying cash, you don't get that $1,000 discount. Well, I could say this one word, but I'm not. But what a way to go. And it's like, why would you do that to folks? Why would you make them present that and then say, oh, by the way, not for you? So I was working at this one dealership group, and they had a money back guarantee at the time, and the 3-day money back guarantee, which I thought was really cool. The subprime customers, however, didn't get the money back guarantee. And I'm like, how do you do that? You can't just decide, well, since you're subprime,
you go over here. This one, you go over there.
You don't get the money back guarantee. Hell freaking no. It's like, how does that happen? But yet it happens. And Randy's right. It's happening. It's happening everywhere. And so how do we convince dealers to say, or do we convince dealers to say, you know what, at the end of the day, let's take care of our customers. Do we have to do this? Can't we do some better practices than this?
I agree. Of course, there are a lot of dealerships that are built on loyalty and repeat business. Yet, dealerships spend an ungodly amount of money advertising, trying to get new customers, and they're not taking care of their current customers. I see it all the time. All you have to do is look at the advertising budget, ask a dealer to see his advertising budget, and then ask the dealer to see what their customer retention budget is. and you'll be amazed at what those numbers look like. Or they may not have a customer retention budget. That might not be a thing.
Do you think that auto dealers are tuned into what's really taking place in their dealerships? Like what's happening at the desk? So like a lot of my focus has been on the desk. I mean, we got plenty of folks in F&I. I get all that F&I training, but where it all starts, where the hub is at the desk. Are they really seeing what's taking place at the desk? Because I don't think so. I don't think that they're holding these guys accountable.
Yeah,
And they're just like a loose cannon.
So when I was coming up back in the day, the desk was called the cash register, right? Because that's where it all happens. And the desk wasn't a place you sat around to chew the fat. If you want to chew the fat, you get out of the desk and you do it somewhere else. So I think that one way to determine quickly what's going on with your customers is looking at your reviews online. One of the things I did every morning when I got up, before I even got into the office, from when the internet started until we sold the stores, is every day I'd get online and I'd read the reviews, see what was happening. And then by the time I got into the store, I found out the rest of the story, and I was on the phone with the customer trying to fix whatever the problem was. And so when you're listening to what the customers are saying, you find out what's happening at the desk, and you can find out who's doing it right and who's not. And so for any dealers out there, if you're not personally handling those customer complaints and the internet complaints and making sure they're being responded to and resolved, not just thank you for your feedback. I mean, my favorite review of all time was this guy just spilled his guts. I mean, it was so long. This review was so long. And the dealership responded, thank you for your post. Please send your concerns to this email address. I looked at it, I was like, what do you think they just did? Like, the guy's telling you what the problem is. Why don't you pick up the phone and call him and resolve it? Don't ask him to do something else. That's not what it's about. And so if that's not a practice that you're doing as a dealer and you're listening tonight, then consider starting that, and consider that you'll know what's going on at the desk. You'll know what's going on in the store. You'll know who the good salesmen are. You'll know who the bad salesmen are. And it'll be very readily apparent. And when you have 3 problems on the same salesman within a 3-week period, you've got a problem.
So, do you think, you and I had this conversation earlier, and there's so many things that we can talk about. There really is a lot that we can talk about. So for many, many years, I talked about the importance that Ev and I understood the idea behind presenting the base payment along with the terms of the sale prior to the product presentation. Right. And that customers really understood those terms. In fact, so much that during the interview that we actually reviewed a bill of sale where the customer understood the terms of the sale, meaning all the buying numbers. And then from there, presentation, from there, disclosure of the products that they purchased that also matched the finance contract. It was called a paper trail. Right. I don't think we have much of that anymore. I think that is eroded since COVID. And the reason why we went there was due to years back where, the Attorney General in the Washington state, if you remember, decided that dealers were payment packing and customers didn't understand the terms of the sale, and they were deceptive because customers didn't understand the terms of the sale. Today, I don't think many F&I people even understand the reason behind a menu, and that we're disclosing a base payment along with the terms prior to the products being presented.
Right.
They don't. They tell me, well, I think it's okay, Beck, to present the base payment after when it's all said and done. I don't know if you really talk through that with your dealers or not.
Yeah. Of course. So the FTC and the attorneys general, one of the things that they do is they will do surveys of your customers. And when you read these complaints, and here they are, well, here are the complaints. When you read these complaints from the FTC, one of the things they say is 60, for example, one I read today, 68% of the customers didn't even know they had purchased an aftermarket product. 68%. Now that's actually
That's a
low.
lot. Well, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
That
it
doesn't
doesn't. That's right.
surprise
And I've seen it a lot higher than that in these complaints. The only defense to that is this. Number one, if they buy a product, they need to sign a product enrollment form. That product needs to go on the buyer's order, on a final buyer's order showing what the cost is. That product needs to go on the installment sales contract, and that product needs to go on the menu. And the only way that you can have a defense of all this stuff was just shoved down my throat and I didn't know what I was buying is by having the customer initial the base payment on the top of the menu. Here's your payment with no products, and you have them initial it, and then here's all the products. And then best practice, in my opinion, page 2 is here's all the accepted products and here's all the declined products. And all that should match. The numbers should match all across those 4 pieces of paper. And if the numbers don't match across those 4 pieces of paper, you got a problem. But then your defense is, no, wait a minute. They might not remember whatever they bought, but I have 4 different pieces of paper they signed with the same information on it. How can you say that we were deceptive or shoving it down their throat, or did the plaintiffs love the five what they call the 5-finger close, where you supposedly put your hand over the installment sales contract in such a way they can't see the numbers and they sign it. That's what their allegations are. That's what the plaintiff lawyers say that we do is put your hand down like that, make them sign it.
So Mike Moran says some markets are very competitive, Chicago, New York, etc. Many dealers in these markets push the limits when it comes to marketing price. For some dealers in those markets, it's very difficult to make a profit. What do those dealers do?
Mike, again, that's a fact-specific thing. And I can't really give you an overall answer without understanding what the facts are. But, part of it is marketing, part of it is price, part of it is, the surveys that I read always say consumers don't mind spending a little bit more if you have a great process and you get them out the door quickly. Like, just let me get out of here in an hour or something, and I don't care what you charge me, right? So it really is, depending on what your competitor is doing or your competitors are doing and what the numbers look like in your market. I mean, that's the best general answer I can give you.
Well, I get it. Does that necessarily mean, though, it's okay to have a price on the website for one thing, bring customers in, and they find out a different price? I know it's very competitive. I'm sure it is, but
No
we
question.
have to.
It's competitive everywhere, not just the big markets, right? And then some dealers are trying we installed the such and such on it, and so you have to pay that also. By the way, that wasn't on the website, but since we put the price on the website, we installed the window tint or whatever that it is, right? And that's what a lot of dealers try to do too, to upsell it. That's also deceptive. Putting a price on the website and then having a market adjustment when you get to the store, that's also deceptive. All these different things, if you're not being transparent and having transparent pricing with your customers, is deceptive. It's a tough balancing act.
It really is. I mean, you have to really kind of, I understand their thinking. It's like, why would I honor a price if the customer didn't even ask about it? And it's like, well, you're the one who had it on the website. I don't know. So how do you respond to that?
That's a risk question. right?
That's another risk
That's
question.
another risk question, right? Some of these are not compliance questions. Some of these are risk questions.
I don't know. It's a compliance deal. I mean, you've got a vehicle that's listed at a certain price on your website, for crying out loud, that you're not honoring. How is that not a compliance question? It becomes a risk question. To me, it's simple. I do simple stuff. I just, the price is the price. It is the price. I didn't tell you to advertise the price. You decided to advertise the price for the price of that vehicle, right, wrong, or indifferent. But here's a customer who's coming on the lot, and this is everyday business. This is every day,
Sure.
and people are probably ready to choke me. But it's like they're coming into. All I'm saying, okay, if this is the business, how do you train your folks on this? How do you train your folks on this? We have a price on the website, but
you've got to want to train your folks on it, is the answer.
If the customer comes in, and they don't talk about it, we don't talk about it. We're going to just take the price off the website. That's the problem. So it becomes a problem because, let's say this, it becomes a ritual. So if in the event this is happening, maybe the salesperson, maybe the F&I manager, sales manager, for whatever reason, gets their feathers ruffled and decide, you know what, you guys are doing unethical business practices. I'm going to snitch on you. I'm going to tell whoever, my attorney, this, that, and the other, that in order to work at this dealership, I have to adhere by these practices. And you know what? If I don't, I'm going to get fired. And I've had that happen before to a dealer who called me, said, you're not going to believe this. And I'm like, I think I do.
Right. I think I do believe it.
I think I do believe it.
And that's why the FTC has started suing individuals at the dealership when they feel like they are responsible. So if you look at recent FTC actions, they're naming individual managers also, which is fairly recent. I don't recall that. I don't recall that happening in years past.
Well, I don't know. What about the Gunderson raid? Do you remember the Gunderson raid?
I don't know
Years
that I did.
Back when I was working with AutoNation, I'm going back in time, and Gunderson was the largest Chevy dealership in the country.
Okay.
And the DMV raid, right? They came in, they knocked down everything, they took files. And
was it in North Carolina? Was that the one?
No, that was California.
Oh, okay. I remember them doing that in North Carolina.
Everybody, Gunderson Chevrolet was just when AutoNation took over that store. The shit hit the fan, and it was like they televised this. It was everywhere, nationwide. The DMV was coming in, and they were getting those files, and they were taking them on trucks, and they were coming in the dealerships, and they were telling GMs, get away from your computer. And they actually took down the GM. They actually took down the F&I person, and they were in jail for a while. They were in jail. But they got new jobs after the fact. But the thing is that, I'm just saying 20 some years ago that happened. But here we are, 30.
That happened. It happened a couple of years. Excuse me. It happened a couple of years ago. It happened in the Midwest. I won't name the dealership, but the dealer decided that they were going to open their own pawn shop, and they started pawning items and cutting checks back to the dealership for down payments. And examples were, they gave $4,000 back to the dealership for an iPad, and all these outrageous numbers for these things that weren't worth, $20. You wouldn't pay $20 for some of these items. And they were cutting checks back to the dealership for these down payment amounts. And now that particular dealer is in jail for 120 months.
Okay, well, I remember, we used to do some that's crazy stuff years ago. Car guy, hey, Tom Kline is the best.
Fred.
Yeah,
thanks,
there
Fred.
you go,
Hello.
Frederick. He never says I'm the best, but he always says you're the best.
Oh, you're the best, Becky.
I'm just here. I'm just your host. Mike Moran. Hey, Chris. Yes. And then we've got so important to be doing it the ethical and legal way.
Yes.
So I had a comment in my F&I Today group, although sometimes I think Fred has my F&I Today group, frankly. Yeah, I told him today, I said, with all your posts, I think people think that you own my F&I Today group. And I do love Fred. He's super great guy. And so with the so we had this, I had this conversation going as far as compliance, and it's like, it really is about doing the right thing. So my comment was, I don't know, for those guys that go to church or not, and who believe in God or not, or churches or not. But it's funny. It's like some of us go to church and we all go, I like that one. That's okay. I can deal with that. Check. I'm good with that. I can deal with that, but I'm not dealing with that. That's not me. I'm not doing it.
Right.
So it's almost like that, right?
Almost.
It's like, I got that piece, Becky. I'm good with it, but I'm not good with that.
That's right.
It's like, so you think about like the fire walk, with Tony Robbins. Have you ever done the fire walk?
I have not.
That's pretty powerful, isn't it? Your mind has to be so focused walking over those coals.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's a belief in you inside that I can walk across those coals and my feet aren't going to burn.
You can let me know how it is.
I'm not saying I'm going to do it. I'm just going to say this is that I do have the conviction about and a skill set that I can be upfront. I can still be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to
Correct.
cheat. I don't care about cheating. I am that good in my skill set. I believe in profit. Profit is not a dirty word to Becky Chernek. I believe in profit. I just believe that there's the right way of doing it. That if we're consistent, if we get customers to like who we are, if we're credible, people will buy from people that they love and
Absolutely.
like. Frederick is one of those folks that people love to buy from.
This is your Gordon Gekko speech.
I think so. Thank you again, Tom.
Greed is good.
And then we have Malcolm. See, he's right. Malcolm, thank you for your honesty. Yep. Honesty is the best policy. Unfortunately, this happens often. It's a desperate attempt to make gross. No ethics. And the reality of it is, it's like, I see it all the time. It's the fear factor. It really, it is. It's like, Becky, we're not going to put product pricing on the menu. I'm like, well, why not? The price is the price.
Right.
So my question to those guys is this. I guess you couldn't be a finance manager in Florida. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Well, the product pricing is the product pricing. On a vehicle service contract, you can't negotiate. So what are you going to do then?
Right. That's right.
The price is the price. So years ago, when I was running a Saturn dealership and I was doing F&I in a Saturn dealership or whatever it took to deliver a car, I don't care, just whatever it takes. Product pricing was product pricing.
Right.
We didn't negotiate. And at first I was uncomfortable. It was like, I don't know. Well, Becky, how can you negotiate the product pricing if we don't negotiate the price of a car?
Right.
I'm like, oh, I think you have a point. And it was uncomfortable. But, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I realized that the price is the price. It's the value. It's what we do. So I think if we understand that, profit is not a dirty word and that we could all be, the more transparent upfront that we are and learning how to sell value of our products, right? And who we are and what we're all about really makes all the difference in the world. Chris Kurt, Great show again. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Looks like we are great show, Becky and Tom. Thank you, Mike. Looks like we're like, any last words before we call it a night?
Last words.
And testament.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think if you're a dealer and you're watching this, consider consider how you want to run your business, and keep that in mind when you're working every day. And as you said, you're gonna, the temptation is there, but if you get tempted to do things that are outside the box, then you have to be prepared to deal with those consequences. And I do think that you're going to see an equal amount of enforcement from the state AGs. Don't forget those plaintiff lawyers. I mean, I know of one dealership that took out a billboard above the store, pointing to the store, and said, if you bought a car here, call me, I can get you money, et cetera, right? I mean, so if your reputation is that way, then then be prepared for that to happen. Class action lawsuits still happen. I know, and if I've said this story before. Class action lawsuit, I know about one that started in church with two ladies that said, hey, did you buy a new car? Where'd you get it? Yeah, I bought mine there too, and I got taken advantage of, and et cetera, et cetera. So 80% of a dealership problems, I always say, come on two legs. They're your customer problems and your employee problems. So if you want to know where to start with your reviews, start with your employee problems, make sure those are being handled. You take care of your employees, you take care of your customers, most of your problems are going to go away.
Amen. I like that. Randy, thank you so much. He agrees with Mike. He agrees with you. Great topic and great to meet Tom. I know, right? Tom Kline he's it. He's the bomb. You got to get his book, Tuck the Octopus. You got to do it. He's amazing. He is like so on it. He's so real, authentic. Those are the kind of folks I like to hang out with, right? They're just
Right.
They're real. Tom's been there. He's done it. He's had his own dealerships. That's what makes him so freaking cool. And I like that because we go back and forth on so many different topics. And he's not trying to blow stuff out of the water. I go to him because I try to find out what's the real deal. What is it? What do I need to do, to best service my dealers? What is, because everybody else likes to blow it up and make it more than what it is. And Tom's like, Becky, let's settle down here. Here's what you have to look at. So I do like that about Tom. We've had some meaningful conversations, haven't we?
Yes.
We should have.
Yes. In many different states, it turns out.
I know. I mean, you're everywhere. There's no doubt with that. That's so true. That is so true. Yeah. And it's outside the box that you may live in a box for a while, right? If it's outside the box, you may live in a box for a while.
It could happen. It could happen.
And I feel like it's okay for, dealers to have a better understanding of this. I think F&I folks, sales managers, everybody has to be on the same page. So I know we can talk about this another time, Tom. You and I know we have 20 different topics to talk about. But again, it does start at the desk. Everything starts at the desk. It's the hub. And if in fact we're box closing, you and I talked about the fact that I know of a GM. He's talking to his crew about, we're going back to Foursquare. We're going back to Foursquare. This is now. This is like now. And who would have ever thought that dealers are going back to Foursquare? But here we are. We're taking our markers out and customers don't understand the terms of the sale. Why bother? Why would they need to understand the terms of the sale? We need to be making some more profit. And I got to say, got to be careful about some of these things. And it's amazing how all of that has circled back, right? 360 degrees back to years ago, and here we are today. Anyway, so
there you go.
Here we go. Anyway, I want to thank you again, Tom, for being on tonight, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you guys for being here with us tonight.